Because your health matters to us, we are committed to bringing you quality programming from a variety of different topics to give you information, because that information is power, and then you can begin to make some small changes in your life to give you a better, happier, healthier lifestyle. Hi everyone. By now you do know, I hope you do know because you've been tuning in every week. My name is Anna Marie Sinatra from SinatraSolutions.com. Yes, you can find me on the web, and I know that you're remembering that too, because I'm very much enjoying all of your emails, all of your phone calls, because what you want to see on this program matters. I take pride and I'm glad to be of service to bring you information from a variety of topics that you're requesting, so keep those emails and those calls coming in. We've got a great program for you today, so make sure if you don't have it right now, go get those pens and that piece of paper, because you're going to want to write down some of this information. It's very, very good. And before we get started, you know I always like to thank our sponsors who make this program happen. You know, I'm so grateful for Western New York MRI. They have state-of-the-art, cutting-edge diagnostic testing equipment. I got that down pat now, Dr. Frank. So when you're in a situation where you need that service, you know you've got somewhere wonderful to go that really cares about you and cares about the community. So we're grateful for them. I'm also very grateful to Melinda from Renaissance Hair Salon, where she uses all natural products to bring out your natural beauty. You know, she takes good care of me with makeup, hair, and nails, all natural, because what you put on your body, what you put in your body is all very, very important. And if you're wondering, what do you mean? Well, you just have to keep tuning in. So when we talk about those issues, you'll get some good information about that. Want to thank the world-class business internet connections Webtastics, who puts together my video newsletter. If you don't have that yet, you want to make sure you email me and say, put me on that email list, so then you'll get firsthand, you'll know who our guests are, and you'll know all that's going on with Sinatra Solutions and Health Matters. And we also want to thank the International Coach Federation, the Buffalo Niagara chapter, for sponsoring this program, and also our newest sponsor, and that's La Face and Body by Lydia. She's at Mr. Frank's Day Spa, and she's doing wonderful things. She is doing non-surgical facelifts. Yeah. See, those are the old-time days when you had to go in for surgery. And maybe some people still need to do that, but there's hope before you take that step. You can go in and do a variety of different things to help your skin look healthier, cleaner, and your body too. She does a lot of detoxifying things as well. So as you can see, those are quite a few sponsors. Our sponsor list keeps growing, and that's a good thing. That means that our program keeps growing, and I know that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen all the times that you can view this program as well, because that has been changing rapidly too. So thank you for watching, and I am so excited to introduce our guest today, who also helped to co-sponsor this show. This is a wonderful organization that I'm learning more about too, because I visited their website, which is a wonderful website filled with a ton of information. And this is, I'm talking about none other than the organization Headway of Western New York. And I have with me today the Executive Director, Katie Johnson Hoffman, as well as the Director of Waiver Services, and he'll tell us a little bit more, I'll give you those initials, Ronald Fernandez. So welcome, and thank you both for coming. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate being on your show.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what is Headway of Western New York?
Well, Headway is a wonderful, it's a small agency that's growing, and it's supplying a need that there is in Western New York and all across the country. It's an agency that through advocacy and education, it supports people with brain injuries and other injuries, and it helps them have a dignity of life. It helps their families understand what is happening when someone has a traumatic brain injury, when someone has another injury. Sometimes you're left alone. You're at ECMC in a situation where your loved one is in the hospital and in a coma, and in a heartbeat, your life changes. The world changes around you. And what do you do? Where do you go? Who knows what's happening unless you live through it yourself? It's very difficult. So consequently, we are there Headway is there to support not only the individual and the survivor, but also the family.
I know one of the things that I saw on your website that really touched me, your website's done very well. It says how your life can change in that 1 minute. You know, we go around our lives and we're not conscious, we're not grateful for how healthy we are, that we have all our faculties, and then in an instant something could change, and that drastically alters how things occur. And I think your website said every 21 seconds there's a head injury?
In the United States, yes, and probably even more so now because we understand head injuries a little more. You know, years ago, it was an unknown. I always like to quote the fact that the brain is the last unknown continent in the world because we just did not know anything about brain injuries. And you know, years ago, people didn't know what to do. Years ago, people died from a brain injury. There was just no recovery. But now we know through science a little bit more on how to keep people alive. But that doesn't say that they go back to being normal again.
Right, right.
We keep them alive, but they totally change, and everyone around them also changes.
Right. And your organization got started. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. And 23 years ago, a group of people who had someone who had a traumatic brain injury in the family, be it a sister, a spouse, a child, or a young adult, got together. Somehow they all got together and said, you know, we need to lean on each other. We need to support each other. Let's help each other. Let's advocate for getting better care for people who have brain injuries. And at that time, there was no place. Once people were discharged from the emergency room, in other words, I shouldn't say emergency, but once they came out of a coma, which is what usually happens, and they started needing rehab, there was no place in New York State that had long-term rehab facilities.
Wow.
And they were sent out of state. The state would not pay to keep them in the state at nursing homes because nursing homes couldn't handle them. Some were sent to mental institutions, and it was
my goodness,
terrible. Some were sent to New England, they were sent to Michigan, they were sent all over the United States. And these poor families would have to drive to visit their loved one. And if they had children, I mean, that was tough, you know. You'd have to put the children in the car and drive long distances just to see dad or mom. And it was really, really, really very, very difficult. And through the advocacy of a certain small group, one being Diana Lanwar, who really kept this going and kept it in front of people, through a mishap in her family, her husband has a traumatic brain injury, she just kept at it. She was just wonderful. And they kept going to Albany and educating the legislators. And I think that's what it was. They were educating the public, educating the legislators as to what this was all about and what was needed to help families and survivors. And that's how traumatic brain injury waiver got started. And it's only 13 years old that we've had this.
To think 13 years ago people had an injury and they had to go out of state.
13, 14 years ago, you just
incredible.
Couldn't do it. But now with this new waiver, we are able to handle it in state. There is funding for it.
What's so exciting about that is that what we're always talking about too is when something happens in your life, you know, instead of getting depressed about it, and sometimes, you know, we have to take that time to feel what happens, what's going on, but then getting into action. You know, if it wasn't for this young lady to educate our legislature, to, you know, do what she did, we wouldn't have what we have today.
Well, I think it was important. I think anyone, it was just a group of volunteers, and that's what was important. Volunteers going together, helping each other, helping all of Western New York and others, and this was contagious. It went all across the state. So all across the state, these small groups were getting together, helping each other, and that's what made it really successful.
When you're talking, it's reminding me again, when I went to study your website, your tagline, the best cure for prevention, the best cure is prevention, the best prevention is awareness.
And that's so important. It is the awareness of what is going on. The one thing that we are all aware of is the hardest bone in your body is your cranium. The brain is sitting there suspended in the cranium. So there are several different ways that you can have a traumatic brain injury. One can be hitting, which that's what most people think. But your brain will go forward, backwards, while it's going back and forth in that cavity, it's ripping apart blood vessels, all kinds of damage, it's twisting and so forth. That's an internal brain injury. There's an external injury, and that is when, let's say, a gunshot wound, so that you understand. That's externally doing brain damage. And there's also a chemical damage that can occur with loss of oxygen to the brain due to medication sometimes can do it, due to choking that will, you'll have a loss of oxygen going into the brain, which causes damage. So those are the different ways that damage can happen to the brain. Now, when the brain is damaged, the rest of the body becomes damaged. Parts of your body stop working. Most traumatic brain injured survivors have to learn how to walk, talk, eat, read. Sometimes they go right back to the basics of being a child. And that's why the rehab is so very important, and the support for the families. Just think of having a loved one that you may be married to, and all of a sudden they're back to being a little baby because they need to be fed, they need to be taken care of. And that's where the state finally realized what they had to do in getting rehab and rehabilitation for these people.
When you talk about brain injuries, the first thing I think of is like the snowmobiles or motorcycles, car accidents. So it's interesting to hear bicycles. It's interesting to hear. And when you were sharing just now, I was thinking about when we have near drownings or people fall, if it's wintertime and they're falling through the ice, or summertime and there's a near drowning, that there's a brain injury then too. Thank goodness for this organization.
It is really, it's a wonderful nonprofit. It's a 501c3. It's one of the many nonprofits in Western New York, but it does a tremendously, very quietly in its own way, because we are made up of 90% of volunteers. Volunteers are there. It's a great volunteer organization. And our funding comes primarily through fundraising that our volunteers help us with, and the support we get from our volunteers is very, very important.
So people can actually give you a call or visit the website and sign up to volunteer. I love our new president. He talks about that all the time, about everybody, especially now in our economic crisis, everybody taking a part and being proactive. And I talk about that a lot. If you suffer from depression, get out of your own self, get out of your own problems, and help someone else. And I'll bet that everybody has something they could relate to in their family or with a friend that has some kind of injury or whatever, that they can get involved in some organization to make a difference.
Well, I always say that a volunteer can make a difference in someone's life, and they can, just by volunteering. They will make a difference in someone's life.
So let's talk a little bit about, I know when we were sharing too, you had told me that Headway does more than just head injuries, and we want to bring Ron. Now I'm going to say all your initials, and then you could tell us what that all means, or the initials to the stuff that you're doing. Is Ronald Fernandez, who's Director of Waiver Services for TBI Waiver and NHTD Waiver. So tell me, what's waiver? What are the waiver services? What do those initials all mean?
Okay, well, a waiver is a way to get Medicaid to pay for services that are not necessarily medical. Medicaid pays for dentists and doctors and medicine. But on a waiver, if you're involved or enrolled in a waiver program, you can get that to pay for counselors to come to your home. You can pay for it for people to maybe put a ramp to your house because you're in a wheelchair. You can be paid for getting special devices. Let's say you can only use half your body, only one arm works. So if you want to cut like steak with one arm, it's very difficult. But there's actually very neat kind of cutting boards that will hold the steak down for you so you can cut it with one hand. The whole point of this program is to help people be as independent as possible and to live as independently as possible and have their lives back that were taken away because of having the injury. So there's two waiver programs. One has been around for a long time, well, 13 years, 14 years, which is a traumatic brain injury waiver program. And that helps people who have traumatic brain injury like we talked about, gunshot wounds or counter-coup injuries, and that's where the brain goes back and forth in your head. Also, strokes, which are acquired brain injury, are also covered by this program as well. So those kind of injuries, if you are able to, with our assistance, live safely in the community, you can get aides, you can get counselors, you can get people to retrain you how to regain maybe how to cook again, or how to take care of your books, how to just deal with your life again.
Wow.
So it's really kind of a cool thing.
Wow.
Over the past year, the state started another program patterned after that waiver called the NHTD. That stands for Nursing Home Transition and Diversion Waiver. And what that means is that these programs help people who are either in the community and want to stay out of nursing homes and be independent, or it can help people who are in nursing homes to get out of them and go back into the community. So that's what that transition diversion thing stands for. That program, the new one, if you're 18 years or over, no matter what the disability and no matter how old you are, including seniors, up to 100 and however old people live, 105. My grandmother passed away; she was 106. So,
wow.
Who knows? You can live pretty long.
We'll go for that. That sounds good,
yeah.
right?
So no matter how old you are, you can get these services to help you. And they're similar, all the ones in the TBI waiver that I talked about a little, but some added ones because we think people may have some more medical problems. So like respiratory therapists and nursing home visits and physician visits. Peer counseling, which is kind of a cool thing where you can have someone who's been in the same kind of shoes you have been, not literally, but in your, maybe literally, but in your life can come and kind of relate to what's going on with you. And again, all these programs are designed to help you stay in the community, live your life. People in our program live in their own homes, their own apartments. They're not in group homes. They're not in like special institutionalized settings. They're where they want to live as long as it's in New York State.
Sounds like you're saving a lot of taxpayer money by not having to institutionalize as well.
Actually, the waiver itself saves money by definition. It has to be less expensive to take care of the people we take care of than to be in a nursing home.
So
by
twofold.
Yeah.
And where people mostly want to be home, be able to keep their independence for as long as they can. I remember when my father was alive, he used to say that too. He says, I don't want to live to be real old if I can't still be independent and take care of myself. So these services are vital to us as human beings.
Well, I think it's very, very important because when someone has getting back to even traumatic brain injury, the loved ones always feel a sense of guilt. Maybe I shouldn't have let them go out or something like that. And having them back maybe in the family home until they can be independently living on their own, they have a love there. It's not just, and that love means a lot in a when someone is recuperating.
Absolutely. Your state of mind is completely connected.
Oh, absolutely. It was interesting, Diana, when I was talking to her, she was saying, we have learned so much about brain injury. I mentioned that once before, and she was telling me the story. She was filling out her IRS form, and she put down that her husband had an injury and was disabled. And when she looked on the form, she said, nowhere did it say brain injury.
Wow.
And she said, I can't fill this out. He has a brain injury. There were all other injuries, disabilities, and so forth, but not a brain injury.
Wow.
And she asked her IRS advisor, this is years ago now, how do I fill it out? And he said, mark them all, because he has a little bit of everything.
Wow.
And it was, when you think about that, how void we were about knowing what this was all about.
One of the things that I feel very blessed being the host of this program is I've been able to talk to so many people, and it's so encouraging and inspiring to hear how something happens, and then at least the people that I'm talking to and interviewing, the old saying, I know it sounds corny, but it's the truth, making lemons out of lemonade. Making lemonade out of lemons. We caught that at the same time. But sometimes life, we do have lemonade and we get lemons. So you have to figure out how to transfer it back to lemonade. And it's so encouraging and inspiring to think about, just regular everyday people like you and like me, like you and the people who started this program and all the other ones too, that it takes someone. I'm thinking right now about Jill Kelly too with Hunter's Hope. Look at how far that came,
Right.
It's just amazing what one person can do to make a difference. It takes one person to be committed, dedicated, and then you get other people involved. And it's what you said, once you start raising that awareness, and people have something to plug into, then they can also help the cause as well.
Right. And now, more than ever, we are committed because of so many servicemen coming back. And they're coming back with, if not a traumatic brain injury, a post-traumatic stress. And we are really, really concerned and involved in that, and have started a support group for
awesome.
The families of servicemen, because, you know, and it's not only the Iraqi war in Afghanistan, but a lot of your vets, you know, from Vietnam.
Vets, yep.
A lot of them, because brain injury was not known.
I was just going to say, they didn't even have post-traumatic
stress
disorder.
That's right. They
didn't
know that, and these poor guys and gals came back, more guys at that time, that, you know, they lost their jobs, their families didn't know who they were, their personality changes, and they didn't know how to deal with it, and it was so sad. So we're trying to be a part of their re-entering the community and their lives by having a support group, and we're doing it through American Legions, and we've got one that meets, if you go on our website, you'll find out the day and the time. It meets in Orchard Park at the American Legion in Orchard Park, and we've had some success. Families have shown up as well as servicemen who are coming out. So this is a very important note, and we'd like to move this, not move it, but add more. We have volunteers who are willing to help. We'd like to be in the North Towns. We'd like to be out in Williamsville area. We'd like to we're in the South Towns now. We'd like to broaden our base. We'd like to be downtown Buffalo. When I spoke to the new director of the city mission, he told me he has 3 or 4 young men who are back from Iraq who are homeless. And that just breaks my heart when I hear that, because, oh my gosh, that is tough. But again, their personalities have changed. You know, who knows why, but we'd like to help them and support them. So,
and you have the resources then to help people who are viewers who are watching today. If you know someone or you're thinking, I want to get involved, you can call Katie and talk to her about how to start a program, a support program in your area.
Right, and then you can call our waiver services number, which I know you'll flash on, and Ron and the staff can take over from there and help, because someone may need additional help. They may be eligible to get on the waiver, and that's what we do. That's what Ron and his staff does. He helps people get on the waiver program.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. And it's not just for, that's what we want to make sure that you're hearing too, that it's not just for the vets who are coming back from Iraq, but also the Vietnam vets too.
Absolutely.
And how helpful is that? Because, you know, at least I know of just the VA hospital. You know, I don't know if there's a lot of other groups around, but how wonderful that they might consider, if you're watching today, you might consider coming in and helping that. I mean, they don't have to start at, excuse the thing, but ground zero, because you've got all the education and all the knowledge we have from the Vietnam vets, what they went through, that you could add now to the vets coming back from Iraq.
Yeah, and again, as Ron mentioned, it's not, you know, what we do is taking it a step further. Now, Ron has a wonderful staff that does assessments, and Ron, why don't you talk a little bit about assessments of how we deal with that?
Well, some of the key points is that if you want to get these services, Headway is a single point of entry for 6 counties for traumatic brain injury. So we oversee Erie, Niagara, Chautauqua, I like to think of as extreme western counties. Also Orleans, which some people don't even know is there, but it's there. Wyoming, and Cattaraugus County. For some reason we don't have Genesee. That goes to the Rochester area. So for Headway, those counties for traumatic brain injury and for the nursing home transition program, all the same counties, Erie, Niagara, Chautauqua, Wyoming, Orleans, except for Cattaraugus for some reason. If you're in Cattaraugus, you'd have to call the Binghamton office.
Okay.
This program is all across the state. We're partnered with the health department. So we are the voice of the health department for this program in this region. And if you want the program, you call us. We will send either myself, or we have a nurse that goes out, or we have another person who will do an assessment. If you qualify for the program, we then link you to providers of service. We don't do the direct providing of service, But we have, for traumatic brain injury, of over 40 providers in the area who provide the service, and we help link you to those services. So, on traumatic brain injury right now in our region, we have about 300 people receiving these services who would be in nursing homes without it. And the other program is new, but we're just starting up. We got a couple people already on it in the program in this area. And we're just thinking that could be a lot larger, because we're talking about any kind of disability, and even if you just become senior and frail and you're starting to head towards maybe being in a nursing home and you really want to stay in the community, we are an option for that.
So the bottom line, believe it or not, our program just goes by so fast. We always say the same thing. We sit down and just have a conversation, and before you know it, the time has passed. That's why it's important to keep those pens and papers going. So the bottom line is that you have a lot of services, even in our challenging times right now, that you have a lot of services, a lot of help to offer for people who have injuries, not just brain injuries, but other types of things that people can call you, even if you're wondering, do I fit inside of one of these categories? You're nodding those heads that they're welcoming phone calls from people who might benefit from the services, from people who may want to volunteer. You want to get involved in some of the support groups. I know you have workshops. March is Brain Awareness.
It's Brain Injury Awareness Month.
March
Thank you for bringing that up.
Injury Awareness Month. You have different activities that go on throughout the year. The website. And if you're not on the internet, you can call and ask questions. And in this last minute or so, is there anything that you'd like to say? To just really, and one of the places I wanted to hit too is like help people to preventative, because that's what I saw when I was on your website looking at the helmets, the importance.
Very important.
And not only just the helmets, but I see kids with those helmets and they're jiggling all around. The proper use of those helmets.
Especially if they're on rollerblades and they're on skateboards. You've got to have a helmet on, otherwise you're going to be in serious trouble if you should fall. And all it takes is a little bump that can become big. And we're always looking for volunteers. We have a lot of fun programs. I know it's a serious subject, but we put a little levity into it, and we do have a lot of programs that we could use volunteers. So volunteers are gold.
Well, I just really want to thank you so much for co-sponsoring this program today and bringing this very, very important information. So thank you very much. And I know that you've been watching and that you've been taking notes, and I'm counting on you to call Katie today and ask her how you can help, because your health matters. We care. We brought you this quality program. You've got the information. Get the power, get active, and do something today.